and then look to fix that. I'm finished, Ed.
Okay, comment. Prior to this, I reinstalled Pigeon and went on to a Linux IRC chat group, which works very effectively, but it drove home what a key difference between any kind of chat group is versus what we're doing now. What we're doing now is asynchronous emails with larger volumes of text in it. Whereas any chat group, whether it be IRC or anything else, those are mostly one-liners or a sentence or two, and they are synchronous, as opposed to what we're doing is asynchronous. So my personal opinion, I doubt that any chat group will work. It's at least unless the group changes their method of operation.
Yeah, you have to dedicate your entire life to a chat group.
Yes,
I'm certainly not going to do, but
yeah, I agree. I think a list server probably works best.
I'm agree with the list server. I still use IRC. I have something. I use something. I used to use a RISC, but I switched to Quassel, and I just run the Quassel server on a VM, and then it's got a little client that you can connect to, and has a little GUI interface. But yeah, IRC is, I would think, would be, if you're wanting archiving and searching IRC, you're kind of on your own there in terms of, like, you know, you're gonna have to keep your own logs and everything. A listserv would be better for that. My only thing, someone suggested Discord. I think it would be quite hypocritical for a Linux group to be using something like Discord. That's that's like way up there in the proprietary stack of things. So I'm not a big fan of Discord for a number of reasons, but yeah, that's just my thoughts. I like a mailing list, and I like something that's not owned by a giant company. So,
Gene, did you have something to say?
Oh, no, I was just waving at Dan Calloway.
Oh, it does seem that the model of the mailing list seems to work fine, and we're used to it. But I think that there's some notion that it may not last forever in its current state. So do we want to be proactive, or do we want to just wait for the inevitable, which may be, you know, not that inevitable or pretty far in the future or sooner than we think? You know, and if so, like what could we do to replicate that? Forums obviously work kind of like a mailing list without the issue of actually having to deal with the issues of you know, the various recipient policies, you know, of deliverability of email. So do people have any appetite for a forum? Obviously there's going to be some sort of administrative time cost, if not physical, like money cost of setting up something somewhere.
I had just a thought there that I guess we should separate the WNCLUG.com from whatever discussion we're having about mailing lists and the lug thing and all that. But it seems like, you know, a lot of things in that direction are going to need to be addressed at some point. So if there's any appetite, Ed, you remember we went down this road at one point a year or so ago about the lug thing, and I think, didn't we come up with something about a thing at Yahoo?
Yeah, but they have since deleted that service, so that doesn't exist. And I think Google has deleted theirs as well. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, is it a question of two different services that we want to have? One that perhaps offers an archive or for whatever purpose, and if so, what do we have any experience or history with people setting that up in the past, and how well it was utilized?
Steve, I used to, well, I administer a Drupal content management system, and we used to have a message forum on that site. But if we have a message forum, it really needs to be moderated, because without some control, you're going to get all kinds of spamming and inappropriate messages posted. So we need to consider that as well.
Well, let me rephrase it. Is there an interest in something that is not met well by a mail list, that would provide an archive? I recall Rusty, I think, has asked for this. That would be a separate kind of entity, wouldn't be necessarily interactive, but it would be a place to say, well, we'll stuff that there, and then people can go and look at it. And I just wondered, because of people mentioning WNCLUG.com and mentioning the Blogspot, Dawn mentioned the Blogspot and the WordPress site, and I went to each of those, and I didn't see anything listed except for the date of 2016. So I'm not sure that what we had was ever utilized, when people tried to set that up. So I'm questioning if there's a burning desire among some people to have a repository that's different than somehow related to the email or to posting things on YouTube in an ad hoc fashion.
Steve, if I may add two things. One is there is an archive in the listserv is in that it is maintained in your client. You can choose whether to delete those, speed them all over as they come into into a folder, or let them be deleted. So you have control of your own archive. Beyond that, I wonder, I certainly don't have a personal need to go looking at old emails. So how many people really care if there is a centralized archive?
Well, I was thinking of an archive of presentations, because I thought that was the thing that people missed via the email.
Well, doesn't what Dan's doing solve that? Record?
Via YouTube, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if that's the general consensus, then we have taken care of that.
Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel for WNC that I manage. That's not a problem.
Yeah, the posting the presentations to YouTube or something under the group, or you can actually set up your own. If we really wanted to get down in the weeds with it, you can set up your own PeerTube instance and host your videos there. But that would require like a VPS or a server. But yeah, as far as I really like the email concept because of I can keep an archive. Somebody mentioned this, but I want to second it as important. I can keep an archive locally. Like I download my mail. I can keep it on my machine here. I can search it. I've got email going back 20 years. A lot of these forum and chat solutions are kind of walled gardens, and so if we move to one of these platforms and decide we don't like it in 5 or 10 years, there's no guarantee you're going to be able to bring that forward. Whereas email being kind of a standard thing, it's a lot easier to archive and back up. But that's my 2 cents.
Leander, what about Dan's YouTube channel? Have you used that at all?
I've looked at. I think I subscribed to him. I have my own YouTube channel. I have my own dreams of becoming a social media influencer as well. And I think I've subscribed to him and looked at it. I've been kind of down in the weeds with work and working on some research projects for some other stuff, and I haven't really had time to be producing content on my own channel. But I've been watching some of Dan's stuff. Yeah.
No, because he was recording presentations from the group, and I thought if the missing link that people I've heard talk about was, a presentation I wanted to go back to 2 years later, and just an email list doesn't do it. So if what Dan has set up is capturing that and people want it, then that independently of the email list seems like something worthwhile. I was just wondering about people's experience with it.
I really don't watch his presentations. He makes other videos on he just did one on Fedora 34 4, which I'm running anyway, and I mean, I'm here at the presentation, so I don't need to rewatch them. So I haven't had an opportunity to watch the recordings, presentations.
The problem is for old people, and here I'm being ageistic, is that some of us forget after the presentation, and that's why we want to go back and recheck it. We have to make sure things like what our name is sometimes.
I got something to add here. I do maintain the WNCLUG-Asheville YouTube channel, but that's not my primary channel. I do that separately from my personal YouTube channel. I have one on Linux and Unix, which has over 200 videos. I've been doing that since about 2008. And so it's, I'm over 1,000 subscribers right now on that channel, but that's separate from our group here. I kept that separate because I didn't want that to be intermingled. And what I can do is I can upload the videos that I'm recording one right now, by the way, it's being recorded. So I can edit that video with Caden Live and then upload that video after we finish here. Everybody who subscribes to the channel obviously can go to it. If you haven't subscribed to it yet, the WNCLUG, I can send a link out to everybody in email after this meeting as well, so that you have it. And please subscribe to it. I think there's probably like 50 some subscribers to that channel right now. But I can't recall if that's a public channel or a private channel. I think it's a public channel. I don't think we can make it private. You know, you can make it unlisted, but you can't make it private, I don't think. I can check into that though.
Yeah, you can make private or unlisted, and there's a difference. And I'm not. YouTube has 2 settings. I'm not.
Yeah, I know that. It's true.
My goal is to eventually get my own PeerTube cranking, but I've been using Odyssey too. But
yeah,
I think PeerTube. I'm not sure what the difference is in those on YouTube.
Well, I'm also up on library LBRY,
Yep.
as well as YouTube. So I've got all my videos on library as well, and that works really well. I've got a lot of interaction from folks. I get subscribers to that all the time. Plus, I have my own blog that I self-host, and I'll talk about that later. But I've been hosting that for about a year now.
I'm just wondering if there's some way we could roll the YouTube usage with the presentations and the kind of our email group together. I don't know if there's a way of doing that, or if YouTube is that flexible or not. Whether we could somehow combine the two. In other words,
there's not an email platform element or feature built into YouTube that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is something that I had thought about that I've used with my church organization in the past. It's called Zoho. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I use Zoho.
Do you? Okay. There is a cost element if you go over 10 members, I think. Used to be anyway. But I can look into it. It's a very good platform for combining email and social networking interaction. If you're familiar with it, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I just use it for email, but
yeah.
It's been very good for me for email.
Right. And that would be something we might want to look into as well.
Yeah.
I don't want us to spend too much time on this today, but I think if anyone is really keen on spinning up a proof of concept of whatever, it's sort of like Dan kind of ran with the YouTube thing, and I think it's a good resource to have. Maybe it's not what everyone would have picked. You know, some people have displeasure for the Google space and so forth, but again, you know, we don't all need to agree. We don't all need to love it. So if someone spins something up and it works for us, that's great. So again, don't be bashful to play with things and see what happens. I think Dave was going to show us something today, so I want to make sure he has his time.
Okay.
Are you ready for that?
I'm ready. If you're ready. Probably only take a few minutes.
All right.
Yeah, remind us.
Anyway, so the Remind program is a sort of a standalone calendar program that I find very useful. And it probably is much more useful than I make it to be. But recently a new release came out. Now let me see if I can remember how to share my screen.
A reminder.
Yeah. Let's see, where is share your screen? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, I'm now sharing my screen.
Not seeing it.
How about now? How about now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Something, yeah, there we go.
Where?
I
Okay.
see it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
It's a view of it.
Oh, I see it.
Okay. I'll be with you shortly.
Running out of time.
Okay, here's an email that I received the other day. Remind 3.3.6 is released. And it gives a URL, a URL to collect it from DianeSkull.Canada. So I did that, and I collected it. Hang on, here we go. Okay. Well, I guess I'm not very prepared for this.
It's remind all. That was your issue.
No, that was
No?
that was something else again.
Okay.
Are you in the right directory to go to remind all? Put a tilde in front.
Looks like he's found it.
I have found it. Okay, I have to make a directory. And then I have to copy this new file. To user local source remind. Okay, there it is. All right, so when you have a tar.gz file like this, this is not going to be installed in the usual way, that is with a package manager. Instead, it's going to be installed by the old traditional ways. So in particular, you have to do a tar xzvf of that file. And now we have a directory, remind 336. And what do we do with that? Well, we don't know what to do with it, except that we can read the Readme file. And it tells us in gory detail how to make it. And this is the way you build it. You use wish, of all things, whatever that is. So I'm going to take this little command here. Whoops. And I'm going to try running it. And it pops up a graphical thing. And it says it's going to put it into user bin. Well, okay, I guess that's okay, acceptable. It wants to know my location. Now, the reason it wants to know my location is because, among other things, remind will calculate the moonrise and sunrise, and it needs to know your Latin long for that. So my latitude is 35 degrees 17 minutes. So I have to change the latitude to 35 17 minutes. And the longitude is 82 30.
Wrong one.
Wrong one. Okay, I'm sorry, 17.
Do you really feel that sliders makes this easier?
No, I don't. I'm not a
Negative.
big fan of graphical stuff in general.
I would submit a feature request there.
80, 30.
Yeah, just type it in.
Yeah, it seems like just a good old text box would work better.
Yeah, it's worked really well. A map might help too.
There's some astronomical software.
Okay, I'm in the northern hemisphere, and
Enter the city.
yeah.
And the state and the country.
And the planet.
Just go ahead and put your whole street address on there. So
Right.
Okay.
Social security too.
Options. Default page size is letter. Default date separator is dash.
Looks fine.
Yeah, and the time separator is colon and blah, blah, blah. So we'll accept that. And now we build remind. And I must say this is an easy way to build something. So we're done. Now if I do a where is remind, it says it's in user bin remind, which is probably okay. And if I do a remind minus V, it says that I'm still using the old one.
February 9th of 2018.
Up to date.
Yeah, well, that didn't work.
Did you run the make install?
No, I don't. Oh, I don't think I have to, do I?
I'm not sure I watched you super closely. You did the which one, but you didn't. It said in there you had to do like that and then the make install.
You're right. I have to do a make install. Absolutely right. Sorry about that.
There was also a mention about if you're not using Windows, and then they had some text underneath that.
Oh, well, okay, we'll get to that in a minute.
All right. I want to just comment, this is a Debian file, a Debian package, and I have used Remind in the past, but I suspect not as well as you do.
Okay, now we've got the new version, 3.3.6. Thank you, Ed. Or Alan, I guess it was.
Or Brent. Did that just replace the old version in the
It did.
process?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so now what will Remind do for you? Well, there's an auxiliary program called TK Remind, and it's a graphical thing, and it produces this calendar of all the reminders for the month of April, including here we have the meeting today at 12 o'clock. And a bunch of birthdays and pay the federal tax and stuff like that there.
Does that take attachments, and is that live that you click on it and it does something?
Yep.
Okay.
If I want to generate a new reminder for Tuesday the 6th, I just click on the 6th, and then I can enter what the reminder is. The reminder is and it's going to give me a timed reminder with 15 minutes of advance notice, or for maybe 30 minutes of advance notice. And I can mess around with this. I can issue 3 days notice in advance. And I don't want to count holidays or weekends. And so I will say, okay, add to the reminder. And there we go, test reminder today.
But can you attach an application or launch something via the reminder you set up?
Attach a reminder.
Well, attach something to a reminder or link an application that will launch.
I'm not sure. You may be able to. I've never tried anything like that. I think that goes beyond the intent. The main idea, well, notice that, okay. The main reason for having this is to just have a calendar that you can refer to and see when somebody's birthday is, for example, or whatever you want to look for. And of course, you can go to months in the future. There's May and June, etc. Or I could go to a particular date, or I could print this calendar. If I say print, it wants to know where I'm going to print it. I'm going to print it to LPR. And LPR is hopefully going to send it to the printer. Well, actually, it hasn't. Oh, it says error during printing. Okay, well, I'm doing it from a machine that I don't print from very often. Anyway, let's see. There is a, there is a way to have repeating events. You can have rather complicated conditions for an event to occur. For example, like the first Saturday of a month, like this one. I don't know what the condition of this is. I think it just says the 5th of June. Well, I don't know. This is a bad example.
Looks like a really good program for Linux, open source. If you could send us a link to it, that would be great.
Okay.
What distro of Linux are you running?
I'm running Fedora 32.
Okay, I'm running
Although
MX.
it really doesn't matter.
I'm running MX, so yeah, 19.3.
And now for some reason I can't quit. I think the reason is,
How about the X in the upper right-hand corner?
well, I killed it all right. Here is a reference. Why don't I just forward this to the list?
Yeah. Yeah, because I'd like to play with it. It looks like it could be useful. Although I have a calendar built into my email program, Proton Mail, that I use, but that's something I could use on other platforms.
Is there a graphical cron application where instead of entering, creating a cron tab from the command line, is there a graphical one?
Hang on just a second, please.
Not aware of any.
If you're talking graphical, Dave's the wrong person to ask.
I know there's Cron, there's Cronny, but I think Cronny is not graphical either.
Yeah, if you wanted one, I'm sure that we could get. I'm sure we could get one done.
That's some seniors at Appalachian.
That's some.
Well, I just did a quick search, and it looks like there are several graphical cron jobs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
One called Zeit.
Yeah.
Spell
Send
that.
Okay. Anyway, I find cron, I remind to be very useful. Among other things, I'm going to unshare my screen now.
And we're back.
And I doubt that you can read this, but this is an example of a calendar printed out by Remind. I have a cron job that simply prints this fairly neat calendar every month. A couple of days before the end of the month, it just prints it out, and I have a calendar for the month. There are many other ways that you can use the thing. Oh, and by the way, in that email that I've sent to you all, I think you'll find references by Diane Skoll, the author of this thing, to a sort of a tutorial on some ways that you can, some more advanced ways you can use it. Some of the rules that are available for calculating when an event should fire are very interesting. I mean, you can have something fire off at the first Tuesday after the new moon, for example, or
Calculate your movable feast.
Yeah, it'll figure out when Easter is, and I think it'll also figure out all the Jewish holidays of the year, if you are into that. Anyway, it's a very useful program. Stop laughing, Steve.
You've made me laugh too.
I'm thinking of all the holidays, and
well, there are quite a lot. I mean, I don't know anything about them, but I am amazed when I hear the list, and they're all variable. They don't have ordinary calendar dates, but they are all, well, they're like Easter, which is I think the first Sunday after the first full moon after the first solstice, or something like that.
Let me pull up my Antikythera device.
Easter is not one of the ones I know about.
Why wouldn't you calculate holidays that way?
It would be useful to know when Purim and Shavuos is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it'll tell you, but I don't know.
Actually, they're always the same time in the calendar year. It's just the Jewish calendar.
Right. Okay. And we don't even know what year it is, do we?
Yeah, I know it's a lot more than 2021. But then there's also Indian calendar, and I don't mean First Peoples, and Chinese, and however many other Mayan calendar. So I'm interested in the capabilities of a calendar program. How often they say, "Oh, you want Mayan calendar to keep track of things? Here you go."
Well, I think it's flexible, and there's always Diane up in Canada. She's quite responsive, actually, and she writes pretty good software.
Thank you, by the way, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have to say about Remind, but I highly recommend it. It's a very good program.
While we're on this subject, can I ask a quick question about Cron? I'd like to run a Cron job to do software updates or operating, just run updates. And I'm wondering what happens if your computer is off or if you're not connected to the internet when the cron runs? Is there a way to configure cron to run it the next time you are connected?
Yeah, it's called Crony.
Well, I'm not sure about connected to the internet. I think Crony certainly does help you out if the computer is not running, because it will stack up all those cron jobs that should have run in the interregnum when it was off, and figure out when they should be run after the thing comes back on.
Right.
But I'm not real sure about whether it can tell whether the computer is up and running but simply not connected to the internet for some crazy reason.
I don't know about
Well, I just set up a new computer, a new Linux box that for somebody else and they're really I want to run software updates on it automatically, but they may not necessarily be connected to a Wi-Fi network when the computer's turned on.
Well, why not simply include in your script a test whether you can ping someplace public like google.com or, you name it. If you can ping it, you're connected.
All right, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
If you get a positive, if you are connected, it'll just run the cron at that time.
Yeah. And if it isn't, it'll send your email or something. You can make it as complicated as you want. You could re-queue it or something like that to try again in 4 hours. Or you name it. World is your oyster.
But what if you run a cron? I'm not used to running cron, obviously. I'm as I say, perennial newbie. What if you run a cron and it fails? Does it give you a message? And is there a way in that program to program it so that it'll try again just because it thought it could run it and it tries and it finds that what you wanted didn't happen?
Well, you can program a script, and of course, in a script, you can have it be as complicated or as, devious as you like. But if it's just a simple command, I believe that the default is that if it fails, it sends email to somebody, probably to root or to the owner of the cron job.
That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
In other words, everybody can have his own cron tab.
Right.
And if your cron job fails, you get the email.
And does anybody feel concerned about automating something which requires sudo, at least temporary root privileges? Because for updating apps, I would assume that you need to use sudo for that.
You could, most I've set up a number of machines with automated updates, and Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, Red Hat, they all have mechanisms for doing Debian, Ubuntu world. There's something called unattended upgrades that you can set up, and then in Fedora, Red Hat, they've got their DNF automatic. I like the Ubuntu Debian solution a lot better because it'll actually schedule and handle reboots. So if you've got like a cluster of machines, you can set one half to reboot at 2 in the morning and the other half to reboot at 2 in the afternoon or something. If there's a kernel update. So I wouldn't use sudo for that. I'm not a big fan of using sudo in automation, but that's kind of me.
Well, I didn't realize that it was. I thought it was a question of privileges. That to install an app, you needed a sudo.
Yeah. For setting up a machine, but at a desktop, I'm down in the weeds with Ansible, and that's nice. So you just do sudo Ansible playbook, and you give it this YML file, and it can install all your packages, create your users, set up your sudo privileges for your SU users or whatever, and go. And then I have my dot files and stuff checked into Git. But
with the unattended ones, they don't involve using sudo level of privileges?
That's kind of, it runs as a service on the machine, so it's kind of baked in at that level. It doesn't actually call sudo or rely on another user to log in and do something. It runs as a system
service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But
and that's not with systemd only. That's with without depending on systemd.
Debian and Fedora and Red Hat all use systemd. I don't think it really necessarily depends on systemd. But if you're using Debian, I think Debian, the systemd lists Debian.
I'm using Anti-X, which is also a Debian derivative, systemd free.
Your distribution should have some mechanism for unattended upgrades, and like I said, they're different between different distributions. So I would look into the one specifically for your distribution and see what they have available. But I would think they would have some mechanism.
I'm running MX, and MX is based on Anti-X as well, and Ubuntu. And it gives me the ability to go in and run MX from the start, either in System D or init. I can choose which one I want to start in and on the fly. So
Yeah.
you should be able to do that with ANIX as well.
As far as I know, it's just a service and it doesn't care what starts it. I mean, I think the system D versus init D thing is really kind of a non-issue. It's just a service. As long as it starts, it doesn't care.
I think it's interesting. I didn't understand services as being outside the restrictions of privileges. It sounds like that's a way almost of doing something that otherwise you'd have to clearly know a password to be able to have a higher level of privileges. But here's something that can be set up that therefore is an attack point.
It really depends. I mean, system services have to be run as some user, be it root or like Apache runs as Apache or HTTPD or www data, depending on the distribution. It is a very distribution specific question about the privileges that a specific service has and what
Right.
it runs in. I just know I'm not sure the Debian and the Red Hat stuff runs at a high enough administrative level to install and remove and update packages. But it doesn't rely on sudo. Like you don't have to have sudo installed to run those things at all. And it doesn't rely on having to set up a cron job with privilege escalation. It's into the service. So it kind of removes a layer. But
Well, I guess my concern is that even if it doesn't involve sudo, which people realized had some bugs in it, anything that involves more than least necessary privileges is something you say you've got more privileges than you need to do what you want, and therefore that's adding something that's potential attack surfaces. I guess I'm expressing my ignorance. I'm sure it's very, very it's very, very secure, or it wouldn't be widely used by systems people.
I mean, very, very secure is all relative. I would argue that nothing is secure. Like, to me, if I want something secure, I don't do it on a computer. And I'm not kidding. I still pay bills by dead trees in the mail. The comment I made about the only way to make a secure system is to like shoot the users and bury them under 6 feet of concrete. Yeah, that's it. Nothing is totally secure, and I'm sure that there are probably exploits available yet to be discovered in some of these unattended upgrade systems. But I think that sudo has shown enough problems that I would rather not run passwordless sudo from cron. I think it's a balance. It's like nothing secure. Maybe one's a little bit better. And like I said, if you ask 10 security experts their opinion on something, you're going to get 8 different opinions at least. So, and I'm not a security expert. So
I would have said 20, but yeah.
And I'm not a security expert, nor do I play one on YouTube. So anyway,
let me just throw in another solution for you, Steve. This doesn't answer your question directly, but what I do for updates is I use the DNF automatic mechanism that's in Fedora, which is capable of doing the updates on a cron job, but it's also capable of just doing the download portion of the update. And that's the time-consuming part, downloading all the packages that are for an update. So I schedule the download portion of the update to occur at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. So right now, all my computers have a big stack of updates pending, but they're not going to do anything with those pending updates until I get around to initiating the update. Now that goes pretty quickly, and I do it as root. So, as you could see from my previous demo, I like to have windows that are owned by me and windows that are owned by root. And I do what I want as me, and I do what I need to do as root in the root window. And so after this meeting is over, what I will do is initiate a giant run where all my 10 computers get updated simultaneously using the files that have been downloaded this morning at 5 a.m.
And you can also another thing on both of those. I use DNF Automatic to you can have it go ahead and automatically apply just security patches. So, you know, if a patch is a security patch, I feel like that should go through automatically as quickly as possible. But you know, if it's just a bug fix for Thunderbird or something, you know, that can wait. So that's another way to kind of configure those as well.
All right, so we can move things along. Alan, did you have anything else for this month?
Not really.
All right, let's go with Pete then.
Hi, everybody. I am currently down at my place in Florida. How's your new place working out, Ed? Did he go up? Did he go? Nope, don't see him. Huh.
He's there.
Anyway,
No, I'm here.
how's your new place working out for you?
Yeah, well, it's getting better and better as more COVID restrictions ease away. But yeah, it's getting better. Yeah, we like the house. We like the place. We love Greenville, and very much.
How's the tax situation in
Well,
that area?
it's lower than North Carolina. How about that?
Okay, that's great.
Here, I'll show you. Everything is bursting in bloom. We are ahead of you, nature-wise, schedule-wise.
Wow. I'll say it's bursting.
Wow.
So everything is green and pretty.
So I guess you didn't get any sub-zero or sub-32 weather the last couple of days.
No, it never got below freezing this year.
Okay. That's great.
Not here. Oddly enough, Pickens, South Carolina, which is almost parallel with us to the west, has colder weather than we do because it's lower in altitude and the cold air goes down.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. Before I forget, I was getting a red circle showing I had no connectivity. Like I see Alan has a red circle, and I remembered you can cut back on the definition of the stream. So I went down to one of the lower ones, and it's been fine ever since.
You do look rather pixelated.
Do I really?
No.
A little vague. You look more like a 700 than a 1000.
Yeah.
I don't think you look pixelated, but
You're a 720 man.
Yeah.
not pixelated here. Not super sharp, but not pixelated.
I think that has to do with the light more than anything.
They moved the local Linux club here. They moved it down to South Jacksonville, which is about a 45-minute drive. So I haven't been able to attend those. So I rely on you guys to keep me in good cheer.
Are they meeting in person?
No, actually, I think I'm not sure whether they're Zooming or what they're using, but you're right. They're not meeting in person.
Of course, it's Florida, so God knows what's happening.
Yes. They say one thing and do another. The town here is called Fernandina Beach, and it's a tourist town like Asheville is, but it's close enough to Georgia, that a lot of people come down from Georgia, and you wouldn't know there's any restrictions at all. The restaurants are 110% of capacity. Nobody's wearing masks.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was able to get my shot, my COVID vaccination, and they have, or they are very soon going to open it up to everybody above, I think, 18 years old, or might be 16 in the next couple of weeks, so that anybody that wants to get a shot will be able to get one. They're not getting the demand for shots, I guess, now that all the people that really wanted them have gotten them. Now they have them left over at the end of the day. So they want to.
Well, you can always get immune by simply getting the infection.
Yes, you could do that.
Hey, that's how I got mine. I'm inoculated the hard way.
Oh boy, and you survived.
Yeah, it was no big deal. Yeah, the only real side effect was feeling tired.
Okay, well, that's what I got from getting the shot. The next day, I was really.
Yeah, so while I don't want to get it, it is being, unless you have comorbidities, it's really not a big deal.
Unless you die from it, it's not a big deal.
That's usually people with comorbidities.
But not always.
Did your wife catch it too, Ed?
Oh, well, until they die.
I'm not aware of anybody without some kind of comorbidity dying.
Well, I'll tell you something. You know what's a comorbidity? Being my age.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you, Steve.
I know.
Ed, did your wife get it too?
Yeah, we both got it simultaneously. It lasted about a week, and then it took a month to get rid of all the fatigue, but the actual illness was only about a week long. No big deal.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's all I've got.
That's great.
So, Ed, you got anything else going on this month?
Well, I will stay off personal issues. There are some health issues around here, not with me, but Linux-wise, I have not unpacked my big box, my big desktop. I haven't unpacked that. It's sitting in a closet. Its updates are a year behind. I think that'll be disastrous when I turn it on. So I am. That was an Arch system, and I am using a laptop. This is a Lenovo T430, which I absolutely love, 99%. And it's a great machine. I took the disk drives out, and I have I've got 2 solid state drives in it. One is my main drive, and the other one's, I actually have 3. I have 2 solid states, and then my home directory is mounted is in another solid state mounted on the first, and then I have a 3rd solid state, which is in one of those M10 cards that I use as a backup directory, a backup folder. But it's a great machine, other than I noticed from looking at my picture here that the camera isn't so great, but hey, I don't use it for anything but this. So I have not joined. I mean, I've got there is another Linux group here, but they are not meeting in public. And when they do, they meet in downtown Greenville, and they meet midweek in the evening, which is never convenient for me. And they are on, I don't remember whether they're on Jitsi or something else, but I haven't made one yet. And if you guys ever open up to face-to-face meetings, you're about the same driving, only slightly longer than the driving time was from Brevard. So I would probably make some of those if you open up physically.
We have to find a place.
Yeah, Pete, I'm surprised you're still in Florida. I thought it'd be getting hot there.
Just the opposite. It was down in the 40s. Last couple of nights, and it's been in the mid 50s the last couple of days. So.
Well, I stuck a message here concerning the Remind program. I use a Remind program on my phone. And basically, I have a pill I have to take every day at 4:30, and that just reminds me to take that pill. Because if I don't do it, I forget it.
Does it beep at you when it's time, or?
Well, I've tried there's a bunch of them, and they're all way too complicated and grossly exceed my needs. So I've found one called Simplest Reminder. And that's all it does. And I just use it for one to do. And you can say, and you can do more. You can set one that doesn't recur. I set one as a recurring reminder every day. Works fantastic. And then, but if you want just simple reminders for one day, it does that too. But it doesn't have a lot of complexity. It's very simple, runs in the background, does a great job, and it's free.
Do you need a reminder to turn on your phone?
I leave it on at all times. In fact, this phone does not have a wireless charger. My wife's does, which is older than this phone. And I have acquired a new Pixel 3. Well, new to me, Pixel 3, which also has wireless charging. So I'm going to switch to wireless charging only for phones, which I really like. You just set it on it's got a little disc. You set it on it, it charges. I love it.
Yep.
No plugging in anymore.
How long does it take?
I usually lay it on there at night, but I would say I could probably go from 0 to 100%, maybe 45 minutes or so.
Wow.
And I'm not at full power. If I used a Google brand, this charges at 5 watts. If I used a Google brand wireless charger, it charges with 15 watts, much, much faster. But Google will not, the phone will not, it will not charge full power on anything other than a Google charger because Google designed it that way.
What's it go up
Samsung's
to?
will. Samsung's will charge fast on a fast charger, even generic Chinese ones.
Ed, this is Rusty. I have a question about your wireless charging. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Dave,
I hear a sort of a carnival calliope in the background.
I think Dave's doing
I
his.
don't know what it is.
David was doing his
Depo.
his pill reminder.
Exactly.
Oh.
It was my eye drop reminder.
Well, Rusty here. I have a question.
Yes.
Ed, you're good on these issues of current and voltage and charging and storage of energy, and so my question is, what these wireless charging systems, they must be by magnetic flux in a winding. But what is the technology? I don't understand it. We're not talking about an external contact that is magnetically contacted. It's truly devoid of any contact. Is that correct? And
Yes, you're correct. Basically, here, wait 1 second. I'll show it to you. I'll show you one my wife uses.
Well, my question is, how do they avoid adding weight to the phone? Because you have to have some sort of windings in order to, I'm assuming that it's by creating an alternating current and then having to convert back to direct current in order to charge the battery.
You're
I'm
correct.
assuming it's
You're
an
correct.
AC circuit.
Rusty, just think of it as a transformer.
Yeah.
And half of the transformer is in this. That's the primary. And the secondary, the transformer, is in the phone. So inside of here is a coil of wire.
Yeah.
And they use pretty big wire for it because they use a heavier gauge. And in the phone, there's another coil in the center.
Yeah.
So that's the two sides of a transformer, the primary and the secondary. And but there's a bunch of smarts in here. They've got a computer chip and a PC board inside of here, and that's all for for power conservation and safety. It has when this powers up, when you put them like here, this thing powers up, and apparently it sends some little minor signal. So I think there is a transmitter of some other frequency, very, very close contact, and it transmits into here, and it uses what they call a QI protocol. And then they talk to each other and identify the charging characteristics of the phone. And then this will adapt to the characteristics of the phone. And then it starts charging. And then when this gets full, it stops charging. When it's charging, they both get a little warm. When they stop charging, they're no longer warm, they shut off. And it's got a bunch of chips in here that they claim are going to protect everything from overheating and overcharging.
What happens if you put the charger on one side of your head and put the phone on the other side of your head?
Nothing, because it's thicker than 8 millimeters.
Your nose lights up.
Plus, there's an air gap there too. Between
Oh yeah, there's a big air gap.
But it's a vacuum.
I've got two of these. This one's one that my wife has, and when you place the phone on, there's an LED, green LED that turns on, and it stays on as long as the phone is on here, which is a bad thing because if you're trying to sleep and it's by your head in the bed, the light stays on. So I have a second one to go by my head. So the light turns on for 10 to 15 seconds and then it goes off. The other thing the LED does is if you don't put the phone on there correctly, or if you put a paper clip or anything else on there that it doesn't like, it doesn't talk to QI protocol to it, it blinks telling you something's wrong. It can tell when something is sitting on it that is metallic, that is not a phone.
Could you send us a link to where you got that because and how much it costs? Because that'd be a great thing to have.
Yeah, they're really cheap. I've got two of them. They both work great. I like the one that the light goes out on better if you have it by the bed. I will do that. Let me. Okay. Once I stop talking, I'll go find the link and I'll drop it in the chat box.
Good.
That's it. I'm really not. I'm involved in non-Linux things for the most part, but life is getting settled down, and in the next few months, I'll hope to get back in some other activities. Maybe I'll try to take that art system out and see what 200 million updates look like. The last time I had a system that I had a huge update backlog up on, it resulted in having to do a whole new reinstall because it kind of corrupted things.
Yeah.
All right, I yield this talking stick.
All right, Steve, what you got going on?
Oh, well, interesting. Not much. Let me see. I was interested in the email. This is just conversational. We got an email from apparently a Nan Moore, who everybody may have seen it, saying, I'm interested in doing Linux as long as someone volunteers to help me over the rough spots if they happen.
Yeah.
So I said, well, Britt, come on over. I don't know that she came today. I don't see a Nan Moore.
No.
But that's reminiscent of years ago when people would ask about questions, and I remember, I'm blanking on his name. Our previous prime leader would say, "Well, I'll meet you, and I'll bring the machine and I'll go over." And oftentimes that would somehow be very difficult for people to be willing to do. And I must say, I wouldn't be somebody to call upon. Thank you, Mike Holstein. I wouldn't be somebody to call upon, especially not in the middle of the night, and say, what should I do with my machine? It's not working right. I have trouble when my wife says her iPad doesn't work anymore in the right way. Let's see. I was interested, the wireless charging, I wrote a kind of snappy comment there about triboelectric wireless charging. I had just found out that the term triboelectric actually is referring to static electricity, and maybe everybody else knew that. But it turns out that it's still not clear how it works. And apparently there's some interest in research to find out. And it's not just a simple thing. It's microscopic domains of positive and negative charges, and that each material has its own work function. And I don't understand that too well because that involves physics, and my physics understanding is unfortunately negligible. But I thought that came up because I'm interested in biological organisms, and presumably in some ways they use triboelectric communication. But I wondered why that wouldn't work also as a wireless charging mechanism, and with the right materials being brought next to each other. That's just a gee whiz bizarre question that if somebody has a real clear answer to that, I'd love to hear it. But I would be surprised if anybody else is interested in triboelectricity at the moment. So I'm just going along. My main continual theme is, and I'd like to see a presentation on this, is on the use of rooting out all the unnecessary programs that one accumulates inadvertently. I think we probably have had this discussion before, but there are things like, to auto remove in Debian. I know there's using depends and rdepends, and I'm wondering if anybody has a really nice periodic approach to keeping their system free of programs that have become obsolete, at least, and whether anybody has really gone for a lean, mean system. And I periodically, but that's it. I'll stop talking. Oh, happy holidays to everybody of any sort. Of holidays.
Hey, I just put the wireless charger link in the chat box. This is the one that the light goes off on. So you just sleep so it doesn't shine in your eye by the bed. It's very expensive. It's $10.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You could put a piece of black tape over the LED.
Well, no, this one doesn't do that. The other one, the light doesn't go off. This one I like better because the light goes off. If you want the other one, I'll find it too.
Was that cheaper?
I think it's $1 or $2 more.
Oh, dear.
Oh, that throws it out.
You gotta run those lights.
All right, Gene? You're still on mute, Gene.
Let me unmute. Yeah, there we go. Well, I was wondering, somebody mentioned in-person meetings. I've noticed that there is where the Earth Fair was, there's now a
Whole Foods.
And has anybody shopped there, been there?
Yeah.
Okay. Did they completely reconfigure the store inside, or is it pretty much the same, Steve?
It's similar. Some things are in different positions. I guess it's not like each Whole Foods seems identical, but they did move the wine. I noticed, or my wife noticed, and I looked at what was the community room, and I'm trying to remember what I saw. I don't think I've seen anybody using it for any purpose. I'm not sure if it's still available. I'm happy to ask them at any time we're interested. We live right near there, so it's easy. We go in twice a week. I buy oranges there. I live in Florida. I have to buy oranges there.
Well, I don't know what the group thinks, but
Why don't we check it out and
be worth
see
looking
if it's
at.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly familiarity, if at least of the location, if not the room, it's worth looking into. Yeah. So if you want to take that on, Steve, and just ask what the availability is,
Sure.
I don't think it's going to be that long, so before we can start doing that again.
Well, other than that, I can't really think of anything that I've just been plugging along with. I'm happy with what I'm using, and it seems to do the job with what I need it to do. I have run into a couple of
Do we know who owns WNCLUG.com and if we can reestablish that as our domain?
It was Tom Willis. Tom Willis seems to have registered in 2016 and hasn't expired yet. According to Dan, it expires
May.
and yeah. So Tom may have the logins and stuff from that still, if anybody knows how to get a hold of him.
Well, I'd be happy to pay the domain registration fee for it for the coming year, but I think we should try to get that secured if we can. When you go to WNCLUG.com, there's a for sale, pretty high price tag on it as well.
$279.
Wow.
Well, that's to get the domain. Just to renew it's usually around $10, but I could be wrong.
Exactly. Usually, I've got a bunch of them. I'm paying about $12 a year to renew them.
It seems to me that what are these things that are called meetup groups? That's right, meetup. It seems to me there's all kinds of platforms to have enough visibility that you can be discovered through a web search. And every sort of social media platform like Meetup or whatever has at least a minimal presence on the internet, some sort of face page that sort of announces who you are and what's your purpose. And that doesn't require having a domain name and the potential to have your own website and all that. You become essentially a subdomain of a service or a subdomain of some platform that has a presence on the web. And then to me, the accumulated threads of our discussions are there. They just simply need to live somewhere as an archive so that we can revisit them and revive those discussions. And any new arriving member can go back and dig in those discussions and do a dig for topics. So I fail to see the need for having a domain registered because I don't think we're headed on a trajectory to develop a website. I think we just need to announce our presence so people can find us and we become whoever we are by the inertia of participation. So I don't think we need to go around on that merry-go-round of having a potential website, which implies that we need a domain, a registered domain.
So I just to sort of argue the other side of that, and I'm not sure I'm, arguing my own opinion here. I'm just arguing the other side. Is there's sort of a twofold thing there. For one, if we own this stuff, we own our own destiny. We're not, we're not beholden to a Yahoo or a Google or a Facebook or whatever that may go away. Plus, there's reasons that things are free. Generally, you're going to either get, spattered with ads, or you're going to have all your data consumed by, whomever is, running the product. The other side of it is we are a hobbyist group. People like doing their own thing. So if someone out there just wants to build this thing because they want to build this thing, that's very much within our mission. So it does rely on somebody building it and somebody sticking around to maintain it. But if that's what somebody wants to do, more power to them. And I certainly would welcome that initiative if, say, a combination of folks want to create a little subcommittee to spin up a forum, mailing list, some sort of hybrid, none of the above, I think that would be great. But again, there's downsides to any of it. There's, the cost thing if it's completely self-hosted. There's the, being involved in some other ecosystem, which I know a lot of folks have a distaste for. So that's where we always get stuck is, going with like a Facebook. A lot of people don't like that, and if it's not
No.
Facebook, it's something else, people may or may not like being part of that platform.
Well, I
the
think I
thing,
agree with you, Brent, that, something simple and short like WNCLUG.com is something that's valuable. And whether we use it or not, it is valuable. And the fact that somebody wants to sell it for $200 or $300 attests to that. So I don't think if we own it at the moment, we should let it lapse if we can avoid it. If we can avoid it for, the expenditure of 10 or even $20 a year, I think we should keep it.
well, could I add that an email listserv is the simplest way to maintain connections for a group of people who don't need a new password and a new authentication method. And the reason why I say that is an email list is self-authenticating. It receives the email that you send. So you own your email and your method of getting your email, and you can reach the group because it's a pass-through directly from someone who has an email identity and is admitted into the group. And at least the trail of discussions is an asset that just simply needs to have a home. It doesn't need to be a home that's constructed around a website, as long as there are providers of that. I have not, of the Google groups that I have been in, I have not seen any kind of oppressive advertising that got in the way of either the text email that is forwarded or the use of the archive, which is a web-based presentation of all of these threads with all the bells and whistles of indexing, search, different ways of tracking the threads, including going to posts by that person so that you can, if you just remember that it was something that Ed or Dave or someone presented at some or discussed, you simply can, go to all the posts of that person. Anyway, my point is, none of this has to be created through a website. It already exists. But I don't think that we should be locked into an authentication scheme like Facebook. A listserv is sufficient because it is self-authenticating. And you don't have this business of password management and so forth.
I would like to suggest that we have a need to discuss this out of a face-to-face exchange. I posted a number of questions that I thought the group might want to address, and you'd get individual responses. And in other words, if we end up with a sense of what there's a consensus that we need X, Y is necessary, this and this and this. And then there are some things that a lot of people might like, in addition, either as part of that service or as separate things. And then there's some individual things, as Brent pointed out, we're a hobbyist group. And if even one or two people say, hey, we'd like to set this up to spread the world, to tell the world all about the wonderful things we do at our meetings, it'll make us happy. Then it's something then we as the members of the group that could say, let's hear a little bit about it. Okay, sounds great. It's not going to embarrass us or cause us damage. Go, and we'll be interested in following it. So I would I just a pitch for people to look at those questions that were posted and either to come up with their own list of questions or to at least get enough responses so we get a sense of where people are, rather than any one of us having strong feelings about a certain approach that we should follow.
Yeah, we need to table this, and let's take this discussion to the mailing list for now, since that's what we have. And I'm not always good about replying to threads like this, but let's all make some effort to let our feelings on this be known within the threads that are going on the mailing list. But moving on, Leander, what do you got going on?
Yes, so I guess taking some notes here. Not a lot going on here. Not a lot has changed. I got the one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine a few weeks ago. So I guess I'm fully vaccinated. Seems to be that that's going well here. We've got a lot of people taking it. The university is handing them out, and they're filling it. I got one kind of early because they had some leftover doses, and they sent a message to our department. But I was kind of surprised at that. But part of me is dreading the return to normal. I'm deeply introverted, and electric thing. I think Steve mentioned. I happen to have 2 degrees in physics, but that requires rubbing. Like that's more of like a.
That's
And
right.
you're not going to. I mean, you're going to have to sit there and rub your smartphone on a pad. That seems time consuming.
I would think if the work function of the materials was deliberately arranged,
Yeah.
it might happen just by putting them close.
Yeah. But you could.
But you're the physicist.
The inductive charging. I mean, it's the same thing toothbrushes have used for 20 or 30 years. But they. You got a coil on one side and I got a coil on the other, and it takes it in. My only complaint as a greeny weenie kind of a thought is that you lose some efficiency there. So you might take 30 watts out of the wall and only get 20 watts into your phone versus like a wire that's in a full bridge rectifier and stuff that would get maybe 80% of it into your phone. So there is some energy loss there. Some of the earlier implementations of it also had some heating issues, because you have to have the charging circuitry in the phone instead of in the charger itself. And so you get extra heat in the phone, which can degrade lithium-ion batteries. I think the newer implementations will probably solve some of that. But just from an efficiency standpoint, I'm a cable kind of a person. So, But on the Linux side of things, I've been using Fedora 34 beta for a few weeks now on my personal machines, and it's been fantastic. I've been a Fedora user for a number of years, back and forth. I ran Debian, and I still run Debian in a lot of places, but I find Fedora. I don't like Canonical or Ubuntu for a number of reasons. I could go into a list here, but I feel like Fedora's got more. If you're going to go corporate Linux, Fedora is the one to pick, and in that direction. I've got the KDE variant on a laptop and the GNOME variant here. I've been trying GNOME more, just out of I seem to like just out of it working well. I will say this: I have been doing. I'm on my 3rd year of Japanese/Asian studies classes, and if anyone says that Windows is downright and Mac are downright superior to Linux as a desktop OS, I want the Asian language IMEs and GNOME and KDE are miles ahead, especially Windows. The fonts for hiragana, katakana, and all that look terrible, god awful in Windows. I don't mean to offend anyone with that terminology, but they do. I mean, they are just bad. GNOME and KDE look great, and the IME works a lot better for input. But if you're not familiar, that's an input method. So you hit a hotkey on your keyboard, and then you can type in a different layout for another language. And even on Mac, I don't find it as useful. The other Linux project I've been kind of working on is my wife brought up her video cassette tapes that she made off of TV 20 years ago when she was a teenager, and we've been digitizing that. I have a Dell Precision laptop that I take upstairs and running Fedora using Open Broadcaster, and I actually got a little box. It takes RCA in off the TV, puts out HDMI because I have an HDMI USB capture device, and that works in Linux. And I plug it into so it's this weird thing. The little box that takes the RCA in and puts out HDMI actually does an up conversion to 720 or 1080, and takes it from the 4:3 or whatever to the 16:9. So then I bring that into Open Broadcaster and I squish it back to the right aspect ratio and record it in 480. And so we've been digitizing mainly for the commercials. She's got a lot of she was a teenager, so it was a lot of like Sailor Moon and stuff like that. But mainly, looking at the old 90s commercials and stuff and kind of the crazy stuff in that, and just kind of historical archiving. But I clean up the tapes. I use KDN Live to clean up the artifacts from the tapes and stuff, and then we can export. Someone's mowing the lawn. Anyway, export the MP4 files for archiving purposes and stuff like that. But it's been so that's been a fun project. She's gotten me watching some 80s anime and stuff like that in the process, and been having fun with that. But yeah, that's really about it. I'm trying to think of anything else. I took some notes here.
All right, thanks. Kevin, what else is going on up in the Northeast?
I have absolutely nothing tech going on. It's kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. As more time goes on, the more forward I'm looking to, I've still got the Nux sitting there, so I'm still Debian 10 on those, Ubuntu 2004 on the laptop that I use for, especially for like screen sharing, because different countries, and for things like my Gallic course. So I do find the keyboard switching for just some of the stroke characters to be a lot simpler on the Ubuntu box than it is on any of the Windows hosts, or the Mac for that matter.
I think it's a GNOME thing. KDE is pretty easy too. I've got both, but yeah, I think it's a GNOME thing mainly. The dbus IME or whatever it is. I use FCITX on my KDE machines. And
so you're using a Scottish keyboard when you talk to your lady friend?
So it's still right. It's still right. A US physical US keyboard. But
all right, Larry.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I went into the old Earth Fair store where we used to meet a couple weeks ago, and I remember that there was a lady that I used to talk to there who had pink hair, who was very friendly and managed that room that we used. And I didn't see her there. And another lady I did talk to said there's a different ownership now. And the room that we used looked like it had a lot of equipment that they use, the store uses in there. And so I didn't check on Wi-Fi. So that's my first short comment. The other thing I wanted to say was, I know Brent wants to move on, but the thing about Mailman, as far as I'm concerned, at least, is that it's very simple and text-based. And I'm kind of old school, just like Dave, as far as text-based Linux. I really like to do things text-based, and there's many graphical ways of doing things with Linux and through web browsers and so forth, and all these different services that we've been discussing here for this mailing list that we've been trying to replace Mailman. All have different flavors and different graphical ways of doing things. To me, plain text is the simplest way, and that's what I learned how to do when I was growing up. I learned how to read and speak English and words and so forth. And throwing graphics in there is making a big complicated mess as far as I'm concerned compared to plain text. And originally, I mean, this group has existed for a long time, and it was set up by when Maine was a nonprofit, and there was actually people who came to the meetings who worked for Maine, and now Maine is gone, and from what somebody said here, Skyrunner is a for-profit organization, and they somehow keep this mailing list working, or they, and haven't kicked us off there. But I guess that's why we're discussing all of this, because that's possible that they will do that at some time. I mean, they may just decide to move on and from Mailman also, arbitrarily. Who knows? Maybe Steve can set up some kind of communication or relationship with the people there. Unless they change too, unless Don Davis disappears, just like Art just retiring, I guess. So anyway, that's my short comments for today about that.
Looks like Ed had something to contribute there.
Yes, I was researching how to get the entire mailing list. I now have it. Ooh, I have an echo. It's very simple to do. You have to do what Larry said, and have to drop into the text-based, well, semi-text-based. If you have administrator privileges, you send the server commands, and then you can do all kinds of other stuff. And so I've done that, and I have the mailing list of membership. What do I do with it now? Who wants it? How do we distribute it? Or should we?
I would say send it to everybody everybody that's here.
So, okay, it's 125 names on there.
Well, if you send it to the 12 or 14 or however many participants here, this is the usual suspects, right?
Well, I don't want to send it to the WNCLUG. It would have to be just to you guys.
Yeah, just harvest our email addresses and send it, copy to each of us. And that way, somebody may want to do something with it. I may not, but at least I'll have the list as it stands now.
And by the way, the format in which it comes back is a little ugly. It's just the email and the name. That's it.
That's really all we need, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt I had done this once before, and I managed to.
I think you did. I think that's where I got it.
Yeah.
The one I had, and I thought it'd be easy to do when we talked about it last month.
It is once you have to do a minute or two of reading.
Well, that's why I probably shouldn't be an administrator. Somebody else should probably take my place.
You can't send it to in the way you normally send an email. You have to send a command at just the domain name. And this particular command requires you to put the password in there, which I don't particularly like, but you have to send the password along with it. I guess that's in clear text.
All right. Did I forget anybody? I kind of bounced around more than I usually do, so I'm not sure if I may have missed somebody. Did everyone get their chance to say their piece?
Rusty.
Oh, Rusty, sorry. Yeah, we talked to you, but we didn't hit on you
Yeah.
specifically.
Well, I wanted to throw in some plugs for my current obsession. I'm trying to become a little more familiar with how Android is essentially Linux, and I hope at some point to actually have a rooted phone that I can really explore in. I've got Termux installed on my Android phone, and I decided, I put in a post yesterday about trying to get DropBear, which is the name for an SSH server daemon. I have that installed on my Android phone, and my goal is to be able to tunnel from my laptop or my working computer to the Android phone. And the reason is that I use my phone as my modem, but my phone is far more capable of speed than the laptop connection, because the laptop connection is throttled to a fixed speed, which is really adequate for my interest, which is mainly text documents and occasionally a YouTube video. But I would like to have better speed, and it makes so one of my goals is to see how I can use a tunnel, an SSH tunnel, as a web proxy for my browser. So I put in that posting to the list what my goal is, but it's causing me to have to learn a lot about tunneling and the syntax of various commands, and I still don't have it figured out. I'm able to create I'm able to get SSH to reserve a port on the local host, and also to reserve a port which is the SSH port, to the server, which is the server living on the Android device. But I'm not yet able to get the channel established. When you do a port forwarding, you are essentially creating a listening service that is a subset of the SSH program. And the listening service has to set up a channel on the client and another channel, which is a software concept, on the Android, which is on the server side. And I just don't have it working yet right. I don't know whether it's a flaw in the server software or something in my issuing the command, or that I haven't designated the right IP address. But it goes on and on. It's been the most amazing thing to read this. An SSH tunnel is essentially a collection of forwarded ports, and there are all these commands. There's the L command, which is for configuring local forwarding, and there's the R command for configuring remote forwarding, and then there's the D command for dynamic forwarding, which should be like bidirectional. And it goes on and on and on. And every time you read some description, it's always a partial. It's like the elephant. You get a blind man who's describing the trunk of the elephant, and another blind man who's describing the leg of the elephant. And it's just endless. But anyway, I'm recruiting among those that are listening, anyone to, what you always want to do when you're in quicksand is you want someone else to jump in with you and thrash around. So I'm recruiting for anyone that might have an interest that has an Android device to try out Drop Bear and see if you can SSH tunnel and web proxy from your laptop. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm on the path.
Rusty, let me jump into your quicksand. I'm going to share my screen a moment and show you what I do with my screen with my brother in Italy. Whoops. Okay. When all else fails, I can set up a tunnel between his machine and my machine with these two commands. See them? SSH -R 1999. Can you see the screen?
I can, yes.
Okay. Anyway, at his end, he starts the process by setting up an SSH channel, well, by connecting his localhost 22 to my port 19999
Yeah.
at datix.us. Once he has done that, then at my end, I can SSH -Y to localhost at that port. And now I have full access to his machine. I don't know whether that's helpful or not, but this is between two Linux machines. One happens to be running.
And that is giving you a terminal access. Is that correct?
Well, it's giving, because of the -Y, it's giving me full X access. So I can run, for example, Firefox on his machine and have it display on mine.
Right. Which, of course, that's a lot of extra data to send all of those screen paintings.
Yeah, it does.
All I want to do is
But it allows me to do anything on his machine and have it display on mine. Now, I don't know whether that's of any use to you or not. I just throw it out there and let you.
I'll have to learn more. I guess I want an open channel for data, and it's going to be up to the applications to send the data, and hopefully the data, of course, is packets, and all I want is for packets to go right now. I don't want to actually view an application that is on someone else's system, but I do want my applications to be able to use the pathways to the internet, the web proxy. So I'm not sure how this is relevant to getting a web proxy established.
Well, I'm not either. But
I put a link in the chat. I don't know if that's roughly what you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of differences. The client is a Windows device, and the proxy is a DigitalOcean droplet, but I would assume that most of what is there is applicable.
So that's my talking, and I will be posting to the list as I go through this experience in the coming days.
Rusty, just a quickie.
Yes.
In listening to your idea, you have the phone, which runs Android, which basically sounds like you're planning to use that as a hotspot to get your computer on the internet. But and then I'm not clear if you're trying to do something different from that via what you say as a web proxy, or whether web proxy is an equivalent, kind of an equivalent process to using it as a hotspot?
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is to set up essentially my my own concept of a hotspot, but it's different because when you turn on a hotspot on an Android, you're actually creating a DHCP network where the gateway and the manager of the local network is one and the same, I believe. On the other hand, when you set up when you have these two devices with an SSH tunnel, they have to be on the same network. They each have to have an IP address, whether it's the global network or whether it's just a local network between the two devices. And at that point, there's still some concept of a gateway. You can discover the IP address, but I'm not sure right now how to channel the TCP packets to that channel. I just haven't figured out the forwarding. I don't know what the flaw is in the software. Or I don't know if it's a flaw in the software or a flaw in my syntax. This says that I'm supposed to be on screen sharing, so I don't see evidence of that. It says I am on screen sharing. Let me go over. In my little tile window, I don't see any evidence of screen sharing, but I'm going to go to, actually, can anyone see any screen sharing taking place?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay, do you see a bunch of colors, which is,
Yep.
okay, that's my splash screen on the Android. So this is Drop Bear, and it's interesting. What you see, if you see a bunch of numbers, this is the daemon the last time it operated, and you can see where it had a child connection from my local IP address with a port 35,000 or something. And you see, as you go down, you see it negotiated a public key authentication, and it sent. It did all the things SSH is supposed to see. It sent a fingerprint to the known host file and so forth. And then you see where it said broken pipe. So every time I try to do this, my SSH, at least using dynamic port forwarding, as I say, I end up with a reserved port for that, but I see all these messages that that don't work. The channel becomes broken, and then it's an interesting thing. You can over on the right, you'll see this daemon has a graphical interface where you can reset the keys, force it to issue a temporary password. It puts all this stuff it's a non-root application running on the Android. It runs out of a folder called that you see there. That path is a non-root path for managing the application, and you can start and stop the server. I think the tools are there. I just don't know how to use them yet. So anyway, I think it's interesting to have the potential of some of these Linux derived applications like SSH that can be installed on an Android. So it's something I definitely want to learn about. So that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm just going to say what I have going on. I know we're kind of well past time, but one thing in the Linux world at work, because I'm still in my Pax Romana state at home where everything is just running perfectly and I haven't had to do much, and that's on Mint 20 at this point. So no real issues to talk about. Password servers, and one free open source product that came up is something called Passbolt. I implemented that on a Debian server, and it works. It uses browser extensions to do its thing, and I'm just curious if anyone has had any experience with password servers where it's not just for you, it's for sharing passwords between multiple people, in a very controlled fashion.
We use Bitwarden at ASU, which I think you can do. It's got like a Docker image or a VMware VM that you can download and use, and that seems to work okay. Personally, my wife and I still share KeyPass databases, but it's Bitwarden seems to work in the corporate environment. It's got a desktop client for whatever OS you like, and it ties into multi-factor authentication stuff, and it I think if you run Docker or depending on your VM solution, you can just download it. A quick commentary on your firewall thing. I kind of do the same. I had apparently there was an Exchange bug about 2 months ago, and that set of IP addresses was just banging on anything serving IMAP-S, which I have a server doing that. And so I did the same thing you did, because I noticed my fail-to-ban was going off quite a lot, and I decided, I'm going to connect to my mail server from a very specific set of IP addresses, and so now I have an NFTables file that's like 40,000 lines long. I would add to make sure you block DigitalOcean is not a good net citizen. I've noticed a lot of the door knocking attempts come. Linode for some reason not so much. I don't know if they're better stewards of their network or if they're just not as popular. But
I've definitely had a recent scan from DigitalOcean. I see quite a bit from AWS as well.
Yeah, AWS is bad too. Yeah,
but I just can't block AWS. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I block. So I kind of my model I take on that is so for a mail server perspective, I let port 25 in from anything because as long as I'm unauthenticated, someone might need to pump mail on me. But 465 and IMAP-S, this number escapes me off the top of my head. I limit those to certain IP ranges because that's where the authentication happens, and that's where they're just going to sit there with a password list and bang on the port. And fail to ban is kind of limited in its usefulness these days because, again, DigitalOcean IPs are so cheap, they can set up a cluster of them and round robin through them, and fail to ban doesn't really pick up on one IP banging on the door all the time, since it's kind of clustered. But yeah, DigitalOcean, AWS, I've kind of limited. They can still dump mail on me, and they can get to port 80 and stuff, but authenticated stuff I kind of try to limit from those. Like I said, Linode doesn't seem so bad. I don't know, but DigitalOcean, man, that is a cesspool. They need to get control of their infrastructure. Anyway, my rant over. Sorry, I just wanted to add to that. I've done some of the same thing. I know it's not best practices or whatever, but it sure cut down on the door knocking.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a xenophobe doing what I'm doing, but it just makes sense because when it comes down to it, our traffic is like overwhelmingly domestic. Like some of our remote access stuff, I'm going to have to probably allow India as well, and apparently one network in Australia that I was unaware of. But it's pretty consistent, and I mean, even if I'm going to get some calls to add this net or that net down the line, I'm still blocking the vast majority of the world, and it's anything to reduce his exposure, I think, is probably worth doing.
So, I think ransomware is. To me, it's strange that ransomware is still a thing because it can be easily mitigated just by backups. Like, it's like, oh, they locked my computer, whatever. I'll wipe it and restore from a backup. And it seems kind of strange to me that people don't have that nailed down pat now. With ransomware is not new, especially organizations. It seems like, oh, they encrypted this Samba share. Well, we'll just restore it from backup. Not a big. We got a backup from 6 hours ago. Not a big deal. But backups are key to this, because if you get something fishy and you're just not sure, if you've got a good backup, you can just nuke it from orbit and restore, and you're back to normal and pretty quick. So,
Leander, what's the name of that Firefox add-on that blocks JavaScript?
Umatrix, and there's a simpler version called uBlock Origin, but you have to turn that feature on in uBlock, and Umatrix does it by default. I will warn you, Umatrix will break a lot of the internet. It's great if you've got the time to sit there and curate your JavaScript whitelist and everything, but you'll install it and nothing's going to work. But I've been running it for half a decade now, so I've got quite the curated whitelist of what I let run, and most things work okay enough. But
as a security professional, making nothing work is the end goal.
That's what I've found. A lot of there's something to be said, I think, for too much complexity. The more complex a system, the more things you open it up to. And a web browser, doing everything it does today, I think is just too much surface, too many gears for a wrench to fall in. And so the more features I can disable out of a web browser, I tend to. So.
All right, I got to go, guys. Good seeing you. See you next month.
It's right down the street. And they only cook so much, and when it's gone, it's gone. I called up the other day to order some ribs, and they said, too late.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Enjoyed it. Goodbye.